Welcome in, everyone, to the Salty Dogs podcast. I am Scott Smith.
And I am Jeff Ryan.
Excuse me. Hold on for 1 second here. This is actually, I'd like to welcome everyone to Tampa 2. This is Casey Phillips here with staff writer Bree Dix.
Hello.
What is happening? It looks like somebody double booked the podcast
whose
studio.
idea is this?
Yeah, these rooms are hard to come by around here.
Go ahead.
So what is this? Like a mashup?
I mean, I was going to call it a SmackDown, but mashup does sound friendlier, you know?
Yeah, I didn't think this was adversarial. This is like one of those TV crossover events, like Law and Order and Homicide: Life on the Streets.
Yeah. Yes.
And in that analogy, Jeff and I are Law and Order because we've been around longer and we've won more Emmys.
I have never watched that. I've never
Which
seen
one?
Law and Order. I've never seen
Wow. It's hard to go through life without ever seeing
I
Law
don't
and
even
Order.
know how to respond to
Okay,
that.
I'll take it back. Maybe I saw like half an episode and went, okay,
There are.
I got the premise on this. I don't need to keep watching it.
They do have a different topic each time.
I understand.
He's
but
like,
it
there's
ends,
law, there's order, you know.
I love Law and Order.
but it ends the same way.
No, it doesn't. That's not true. Sometimes they get off.
Ah.
Anyway,
This is off to a great start.
I guess we're doing the Salty Tampa 2 Dogs today.
Yeah.
I love that.
Oh, that's good.
I think what we'll do is we'll do the
Is-
first half of it in our usual format, which really isn't a format. We just kind of bounce from one topic to another.
And then we will come in to sweep up and organize all the things with
Sounds
our pre-planned topics that we tend to do. I feel like this is about right. The female podcast is like orderly and organized and planned, and the dude podcast is, well, you know what?
We're gonna wing it.
Chat.
Yeah.
But there's no fun if it's orderly.
I disagree.
Call inaudible every
She's
now and
Monica.
Because you know.
I 100% am Monica, and I don't like that.
because then you know what's going to happen. That's a boring way to
Well,
lead
she's
life.
going to ask a question, doesn't know what we're going to say. And
Well,
There you
there's
go.
that. That's true.
I
just
never,
roll with it.
Yes. Come on, Jeff.
Jeff, you even brought some notes today, and we know very well that never
only
happens.
because I wanted to make sure I got my quote
Okay.
absolutely
All right, well,
correct.
don't spoil it. All right, so in great Salty Dog format, we'll just choose randomly a topic. Actually, I got to say, it's not one we're going to really enjoy talking about very much, but we have to. The part, especially when you work in the building, the
Right.
part of this job that is probably one of the least fun parts is when people lose their jobs.
Oh.
And last week, Todd Bowles decided that the team would part ways with 6 coaches: Byron Leftwich, the offensive coordinator, Kevin Garver, Lori Locust, Chris Boniol, Jeff Castle, Todd McNair, and then Clyde Christensen, Rick Christoffel, and Bob Sanders all elected to retire. So, thoughts on that?
I call that philosophical differences.
Between?
Whoever made the decision to go with them or not go with them. It's a tough go. But you have to realize it's been 4 seasons holding the same group together, and that's not easy to do. And you had a coaching change last year, and in fairness to Todd, he's got to figure out what to do because, we got to be honest here, this season was not what we expected.
Right. Well, and I would say, just to piggyback off of that, I'm kind of in this same line that this is a production-based business. And when you finish with a losing record, when you fall short of expectations, this is what's going to occur during the off season. As sad as that is, as cutthroat of a business as it is, that's what happens. And so we'll see kind of what the offense looks like next season.
Yeah, and I mean, I know it sounds like a lot of coaches, and it is, but at the same time, it's almost like 2 years worth of what you would typically have in terms of turnover because of the fact that Bowles was hired so late in the process last year. It was too late to make any changes according to what he would have wanted to do. So everything just ended up staying status quo last year, not necessarily because it's what they would have wanted to do, but because it was almost necessitated. So if you look at it as 2 years worth combined, then I think that helps make a little bit more sense in giving like you said, Bree, the production just wasn't there. And then also the idea of what Bowles wants to make this team into now that he is the one really in charge to start the offseason. I think that makes sense.
Right, but you got to remember Todd went into this with this group of people and said, okay, let's see what we can do. Let's see how we can make this fly. And it didn't. It's unfortunate because all of us know all of these men and women, and we all had good relationships with them. So it becomes we are in our business mode of these are things that happen, and you just get used to it. But in all honesty, you really don't get used to it. You just deal with it.
And I would add on to Bree's point about it being a production-based business, and that's why these decisions are made. Let's also then give these 9 coaches some kudos because the team did produce very well. And most of these people were here from 2019 on, not all of them like Bob Sanders. But so, let's give, even if a change had to be made, let's take a moment to give Byron Leftwich credit for being a part of
Yep.
what was the highest scoring offense over the previous 2 seasons.
Correct.
And let's give all these people credit, at least the ones that were here, which is most of them, for they would say all the time that that's a collective job up there, that they're all working together for one goal. So everybody gets credit for winning the Super Bowl and then having a 13-4 season where you were close to advancing to the conference championship game, and until a late rally by the Rams.
And you won the division.
And you won the division and did actually win the division this year. First time in team history the team has won 2 in a row.
Yeah.
Right.
So then you say, okay, then why make a change if you have all of this with one bad season? And we go back to what Casey said, is that we want to move forward into a different direction, which is philosophical differences, perhaps.
So it will at least be interesting once we get into it, who they choose and what that means for this offense. Of course, that's probably going to have a lot to do with who's playing quarterback.
Right. You think?
I don't think that's that important. You know.
No, seriously, you think?
I think it's going to be interesting. To me, this is such a chicken or egg offseason.
Right.
Is the quarterback decision dictating the offensive coordinator, all those other things? Is the choice of the offensive coordinator influencing the quarterback thing? Like, that's, to me, what's so fascinating. It's just the timeline of all these decisions, because as we've seen in the NFL, there are a lot of times that quarterbacks are starting to have more and more of a say in what happens in the organization, especially
like Russell Wilson,
like Aaron Rodgers, like these guys that are, saying that they want more control.
Yeah, and how well has that gone?
Yeah, that's a debate for another day. But
Do you think they've taken that from basketball? Because basketball players
the
have
stars,
the stars.
LeBron runs things in LA
Correct.
and so on.
Which is so, again, this is a whole thing we could get into, but I feel like that's interesting because in basketball, one player is everything, that when there's only 5 people at all times and you do everything, offense, defense, everything else, that makes more sense to me than where we talk about football being truly a team game. And yes, of course, the quarterback position is different in the sense of how much it affects, but it is, even still, your best quarterback is only on the field half the time, or you hope it's for more than half the time based on time of possession. But I think it's, to me, what's so intriguing is just the order of events this offseason. Where do you hire an offensive coordinator you think could potentially influence Brady, or is that Brady's decisions already made one way or the other, and then that helps you decide the direction you want to go? I just think all of that is so interesting on what could potentially what could be the first domino to fall and what that might do to all the other choices.
Well, if Tom Brady does decide to return to the Buccaneers, then you absolutely involve him in you get his input in what he wants to see in a coordinator. But if it's known fairly early on that Tom's not coming back, then I think you just hire the best coordinator you can find and then figure out the quarterback position.
Well, if you just go with I'm going to play devil's advocate here. If you go with an offensive coordinator, if Tom Brady comes back, then you're kind of like you're a year, maybe 2 years.
A little bit of a lame duck feeling in some ways, yeah.
Yeah, and if you're an OC coming in and you are putting it together for this particular quarterback, and then he leaves after a year or so, then you are, okay, now what do we do?
Yeah, but a good coach will be adaptable.
Well,
the best ones are.
There you go.
That's the key. Yeah, I don't think you want to hire someone that you think of as only being a coordinator that would be good for a Tom Brady-led offense, obviously. That no matter what, no matter if he's coming back and that helped dictate it, that's he just eventually, theoretically, he won't be here whenever that is, and you don't want to feel like your coordinator was mainly for him, only for him. Yeah, you would want it to be something that no matter who was leading the offense, you like the vision that this offensive coordinator has for your team. And I think hopefully that's the case again, no matter what. Whether or not Brady's coming back, you want an offensive coordinator that you believe in their idea of the team.
Right.
And then hope that works with whoever is at quarterback as well.
All right. On to the
so
next
we've
topic.
solved it. That's what I heard. We fixed all the things.
And
Well, there are plenty of coaches that have had success with different types of quarterbacks. Start with Bruce Arians.
Sure.
Yeah.
He's well known as the QB whisperer, but those were different types of quarterbacks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyway, the only other bit of news really at this time of the year since the Bucs season is over is the reserve future signings, which we really don't have to get that deep into because almost all of them are just the guys that were on the practice squad at the end. But just to explain for anybody that doesn't know what reserve futures means, the league year doesn't start till March 15th, but having these futures contracts allows you to sign anybody that was on a practice squad when the season ends because their contracts immediately expire when the season ends, or was just a free agent who was out there not on any team when the season ended. And so all teams can do this at this point of the year. And then they're called futures because they don't hurt your salary cap this year. They don't count until the season starts. So that's what they are.
I always appreciate you explaining all of that because even working here as long as I have, every time we get to like the technical things, I'm like, Scott, say all that stuff again.
Repeat, please.
Yeah.
Casey, I take a cue from you on hosting with Scott. Yeah, what do you think, Scott?
Yep. Always a good idea.
There's still rules there's so many rules. There's so many rules. Some of them still catch me by surprise each year. Like, you know how veterans who have vested veterans aren't waived; they're just cut and immediately become free agents. Whereas non-vested veterans, when they're waived, they have to go through waivers and not be claimed before they're free agents. But at some point in the year, I think it's after the trade deadline, then veterans are subject to waivers too. And I always forget that until like November.
Yeah.
And I forget it until you remember it and then talk about it.
And then every offseason, it comes up again.
I like it.
We do have compensatory picks coming up in probably a month or so. I believe we're expected to get one.
Hopefully.
Yeah, that's the formula seems to. I won't get into that because that's a topic for another day. But the formula would indicate that we're probably going to get one, maybe like a 5th-round pick. Mm-hmm. All right. Well,
usually at this point, I point out what Tom Brady said on his podcast. You know, usually because I'm the one that listens.
Oh yeah, he
to
always
his,
listens to Let's Go.
We can talk about it. We just have to have that bleep button
well,
ready.
Yeah. Actually,
Tell us how you feel, JR.
JR's getting ready over here. He's got
crossing the legs.
I loved what he said, simply because he just set the tone. Quit asking me that question.
Well, he's been irritated at that question for months now. We've seen it in this room.
I have to say this. I don't think he was irritated with Jim Gray.
I don't either.
Because if that show's recorded, sorry, it's recorded. And so if he was not happy if you caught me off guard and I said something, then I would say, okay, wait, we don't want to run that.
We do it all the time.
We do it all the time, right? Because I'll say something and go, oh, maybe I
he drops an
said
F-bomb every now and then.
Well, yeah, that's true. But
you and Tom Brady.
Yeah,
I try to keep it clean for the kids.
Yeah. The thing is that I liked what he did because it's just like quit asking the question. He doesn't know. And if he does know, he's not telling anybody, and he doesn't need to tell anybody for a while.
But he had to know that question was coming from Jim Gray, and he was prepared to react the way he did.
Sure, 100%.
What I thought was interesting about it is that Jim Gray did not ask him, "Are you coming back?" That I would have understood more the response that he had. He asked him, "Do you have a timetable for it?"
Right.
And I thought it was funny that it was more. That it showed either he was saying that response about timetable even, that it's not even just about are you coming back that he was frustrated with. It was even the timetable question, or it was like even just the moment he heard anybody talking about the coming back, whatever came before or after it, it was like, oh my gosh, stop asking me this. Which is funny because, of course, it's all we're going to talk about until he makes that decision. It's like that's just how it works around here.
And so for him, he doesn't really need to make that decision until, what would be he doesn't really have to make a decision, does he?
No, but like last year, if I can compare it to last year, when he briefly retired, if he was going to come back, he needed to do it around when he did or earlier because there was a bunch of other dominoes, to use what somebody you said, that fell or were going to fall. Like, does Ryan Jensen re-sign with us? Mm-hmm. Does Carlton Davis re-sign with us? Okay. Stuff like that. So I think you're in the exact same position because they don't want to wait forever to hire all these other coaches.
But last year he was under contract, so he couldn't go anywhere unless the organization said you could go somewhere.
Yeah, but
now
still,
he's not under contract.
Either way, he was making a decision where he wasn't coming back and then he was.
Yeah, so I agree with you in the sense of it behooves him in some ways to make the decision pre-free agency, especially if it's here and you care about who you're re-signing.
Right.
Or the alternative is he doesn't make a decision before free agency, sees what all the teams do in free agency and who he just feels like is the team that he most wants to go to, and then makes a decision. Like, you can look at it either way of either if he does it before free agency, then that maybe helps whatever team, if it's us or someone else, build, or he waits for the team to build and then makes the decision. And I can understand both sides of that.
Cool.
Fair enough.
Just can't wait too long and have all the seats taken.
Yeah.
Well,
the quarterback carousel.
Time if he does move on for them to make the best decision, or, for free agents as opposed to going through the draft for someone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, time will tell.
Yeah.
How's
all
that?
Right. Well, last week, since this is sort of the season capping kind of thing or transitioning into the new season,
sure.
Jeff and I, and I'm sure you two did on Tampa 2 as well, kind of already chopped up the Cowboys game.
Yep.
I don't think we really need to do that to
Just
any extent.
chopped it all up into tiny little pieces.
And then swiped
And
it
then,
off the
yeah,
table.
swept it away, and we're
Well,
never talking about it
all
again.
I have to say is after watching this last weekend of games, why couldn't we get the Valley version of this peaks and valleys Dak Prescott?
Yes.
We got the peak version of Dak Prescott. He was phenomenal against us.
Sunday's game, I thought, was going to be Monday's game.
Yep.
Right.
The way he played, I honestly thought that was going to be the case. That, okay, and I really felt strongly that we were going to be going to San Francisco. I really did. And then watching that game, it was like, yeah, okay, that's the team that they're so up and down. And
Well, him especially.
yes.
Yeah.
And he had 2 picks and possibly could have had 4. There was good opportunities too. And the score, the very last one would have been a touchdown, ifs and buts. But then the score would have been even larger than what it was because it looks closer than that game truly was, in my opinion.
But I will say, if you look at the Cowboys season as a whole, that game really followed the trend because every single loss the Cowboys had, they bounced back in spectacular fashion. And that's exactly what happened off their loss against the Commanders, where Dak Prescott had one of the worst games of his career, and he followed it up with one of the best games of his career against the Bucs.
Unfortunately, he does not get an opportunity to rebound this time.
Yeah. No, he does not.
That's how the playoffs work.
Yeah.
So there you go again. Is you get into the playoffs? Would they had 12 wins? Minnesota had 12 wins, or 13 wins?
Yeah, they were a fraud.
Right. But are you what your record says you are?
Not in this case.
Okay. So
Well, yeah, I think if you have a minus point differential,
Right.
that might
with
be a little
13
more.
wins.
And I
might
guess-
be a little more important.
And I guess this is what happens, and we're kind of in that mode right now, is we've had 3 very successful years. This past season was not as successful as we wanted, but you still won the division. You still made it to the playoffs 3 years in a row. There's not too many times that we went to the playoffs 3 years in a row. So in the history of the franchise.
Only one other time.
There you go. So the thing is, the regular season, you know when you're like Buffalo, for example, they're 4 years in, always getting there but not making it to the Super Bowl, and then all of a sudden you start hearing the talk: do we need to change the coach? Do we need to
Buffalo?
in Buffalo?
They're not saying that.
They are starting.
No way.
I'm telling you.
No freaking way.
You
Maybe
see.
the coordinators. You mean the coordinators, Ken Dorsey?
I'm just
Their offense was better this year than last year.
and
And in both years, they failed to move on.
I'm just saying, if you keep an eye on the Buffalo Mafia, they are not happy.
Well, they don't want McDermott fired. There's no chance that's true.
Well, it's pretty much running right now. He's a really nice guy, but can he get you there?
I think you're giving us a straw man.
I am
Jeff.
not, man. I'm just saying.
The Bills. The thing is, Josh Allen is so good that it kind of hid some of the deficiencies that they had, and they need to. And Von Miller going down was a big part of
Big
it.
deal.
That was
So
yeah.
they need to work on that this offseason so they can make the most of having Josh Allen. But also, unfortunately for them, they have Josh Allen at the same time that the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes and the Bengals have Joe Burrow.
Right.
So
There you
this
go.
is never going to be easy.
No, but they also need another wide receiver.
Yep.
They need help there.
Yeah, because Diggs ends up being just so focused on, which is understandable.
I did like his comment. If you don't know, he left
Yeah.
the locker room very quickly and he came back. But I liked what he said: is you should be more upset about the results rather than
How
what
I'm taking it.
correct. Right, which I like that. He's a little emotional, but that's okay.
That's fine.
I'm sorry, a wide receiver?
Getting emotional?
Yeah, I don't understand.
You'd think. At least he kept the
sound
shirt
right.
on.
Our guys aren't that emotional. I
No,
mean, Mike
we
can
are
get there.
Yeah, Mike, I think, would say he was earlier in
Yeah.
his career. But we also, I feel like every time we talk about our wide receivers, what we talk about is how they're not typical wide receivers in their demeanor, that they're not divas and they're all very humble and they all get along with each other and, they care about the team first and all these things. That's constantly the narrative, is that we don't have, quote unquote, stereotypical wide receivers. And again, it's like, no, of course not every wide receiver is like that, but there's stereotypes exist for a reason. And it is also, I think, a helpful thing for that position, similar to DBs that kind of get the same rap. When you're kind of out there on an island by yourself, you need that swagger, you need that, what can be the line between confidence and cockiness. And I feel like both of those positions need some of that for success, that they're not the same as the O-line that's all in there as a group together and in the trenches and you don't really know what they're doing. Like their name is getting called good, bad, and ugly, and kind of out a little bit more on an island. So I've always thought that kind of made sense for them.
See, Jeff, they're getting into the salty dog format.
Yeah, I know.
Here. We just transitioned right from the Bills to our receivers.
Yeah, and the last thing is with Tom Brady. He made a comment that at the end of the day, there's only one team that's really happy. Last week there were 14 teams, then it dropped down,
Right.
and then now there's 4, those top 4, and then there's only going to be 2, and then there's only going to be one team
Did you
that's
guys
going
know
to
this?
feel that they're going to be happy.
This?
That only one
That
team
it went
is
from
happy?
14 to 8 to 4. Is that how the playoffs works? Did you guys were you aware of this?
Wow.
Are
You
we
do
questioning our
sometimes-
football
We
knowledge?
were-
Is this what's happening?
We are aware, Scott.
I'm just pointing out the banality of this.
But let me explain. Not every fan that listens to this totally understands the NFL, because we do have people outside the country that don't totally understand the NFL, and they ask us questions. So sometimes you just have to, it's called resetting the table so people understand it.
But is there another way that the playoffs could have worked other than starting with some teams and then ending with fewer and finally one?
Yes, but the point is
there a sport that doesn't do that?
Yeah, well, talk to Tom Brady, because I'm telling you exactly what he said. So if
salty.
TB12 can say it, I can.
You've watched Tom Brady's press conferences for 3 years.
Listen.
You know that he knows how to do, he knows how to say something without
For the
saying
record,
anything.
He's
Bree
the
and I
best.
never argue on our show.
Well,
Sounds boring.
Yeah, really.
We really do not.
No,
We're
it's
BFFs.
not boring,
And
by
that's-
the way. I've listened to it. And it's
that's
quite
why
We
you're
have
called the
different
Tampa-
opinions.
It's called Tampa 2, not Salty Dogs.
Exactly.
Okay.
Tampa 2 BFFs.
I don't want us to get into the whole like Stephen A. Smith
Oh, gosh.
where they're just yelling at each other.
I mean, I might be okay watching you guys do that. We can just sit over here with our popcorn.
Yeah.
Wow.
Throw some M&Ms in there. Let's go.
All right, maybe we should move on.
Go ahead.
We also don't need to do a real deep dive on this because Jeff and I talked about it like last week, but we're getting really close to the Ronde Barber news one way or the other.
Oh, my gosh.
You guys have any thoughts on that?
Put the man in. Give her the love of Pete. I don't know what else to say besides that. You completely just change a whole position, define it for generations. You have stats no one else has. You make plays in the key moments, and I mean, I just feel like he was a victim of a, I don't know, smaller market team where he just somehow didn't get the love that some of the bigger name guys did. But if we're really talking about what the Hall of Fame is supposed to be, that you are someone who made your mark on the game in a way that potentially impacted it or changed it forever, that is Ronde Barber.
Yes, and I think it's not a small market thing, but I think the problem for him is Derek Brooks, Warren Sapp, John Lynch, and people in the room go, how many guys from one defense are we going to put in the Hall of Fame?
As many as deserve it.
I agree,
And that is my
but I'm
argument.
just saying I know that happens.
Ask the Steelers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know, but it doesn't happen often.
But
No.
I agree with you. I understand the fatigue, and it reminds me of sometimes the MVP voting where people just don't want to keep voting the same
It should be
person
LeBron
in.
every year.
Right, and it's like, okay, are they the most valuable player or not? Like,
Mm.
I don't care if they've won it before, if they were still that this year, and that's how I feel. I don't care how many guys deserve it. Are you penalizing them because we had a good drafts? Like, are you basically just mad that, that they recognized talent and put it all on one team? Like,
Right.
I just don't understand how that should ever be something that is punishment to those guys because they had good teammates. Because if so, then man, if you're wanting to get in the Hall of Fame in the future, don't go play for a good team. Heaven forbid you go play with all these
Can't
good
help
players.
it if you're drafted, though.
Yeah, like and again, same to your point. Yeah, if you get drafted, you better hope there's not a bunch of other good people that got drafted, and it'll keep you from getting in. So yeah, I just put the man in. That's all I have to say.
I'm curious if you two will agree or disagree. I think Darrell Revis gets in on the first ballot.
We've been arguing about
We've
this.
argued about this. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
Scott and I have discussed this
Okay.
after Insider as well, not on air or anything, just as we walk to and from Insider. And I think we said that we both did not believe he was like a guaranteed first balloter. Was that?
Yeah, that's the way.
Yeah.
That's contention I've been making around the office, and you and I are very much in
Yes.
the minority there.
I know. And
Everybody
I
thinks
get it.
he's going straight in.
I don't know if that's just a recency bias of like his name had such flash for a while there. Like, I don't know. And I'll be honest, I haven't sat down and like studied his stats or his whatever. I just don't know that I view him. I'm not saying he wasn't incredible or that he's not Hall of Fame worthy, but I just think when you look at some names like a Peyton Manning and you're like, okay, well, obviously, I don't know that I feel like I have that same immediate reaction to him as, oh, well, obviously. Again, would I be shocked?
But a lot of people do, like Jeff.
You feel similarly about him as you would like a Peyton Manning type name. Wow, that's interesting.
Well, and a lot too is because of where he played, and I think that plays a lot into it. He played he played in New York. That's you get everything. He was called the Island.
Yeah, that's the key, man. You gotta have a good nickname.
Yeah, if you get a nickname, if you get a nickname,
it's surefire.
You're pretty much in.
This is why I'm never gonna get in. I don't have a nickname. We gotta work on this.
We'll work on it. Is Ed Too Tall Jones in the Hall of Fame? Miss Dallas Cowboys expert?
I do not believe so. No, he's in the Ring of Honor. Yes.
Okay. Because that's good.
But I think he was one of the controversial.
Not make it's.
Yes.
As
the same with Drew Pearson for all that time.
The counter argument to Jeff's for me on Revis is
he is not in the Hall of Fame.
No,
he's not. Okay,
the
good.
Google machine.
Is that when they're sitting in that room and they have people backlogged that they want to get in. Hopefully, Ronde is one of them. And so what happens each year is there's new players, and you look at them and go, well, Joe Thomas, absolutely, first ballot, no question.
Right.
And then you get to Darrell Revis, and you're like, well, I don't think it's terrible if he has to wait 1 year. Right. Let's get this guy in instead, and then we can work on that in the years to come because he's definitely going in the Hall of Fame. I would point out that Bree has been silent and has not said that Ronde should be in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, I 1,000% do. But I will say I'm not as well versed on Bucs history, but I think kind of along the lines of what Casey was saying, that for the Hall of Fame, a lot of it is the name game. Like in Aaron Donald, like players like that, they're going to be a surefire Hall of Fame guy. And I will say that I do think Ronde Barber is a very popular name and a guy that even before I came here, I knew of his accolades. I knew what he did. I knew of his impact on the game that superseded just the Buccaneers' time and really around the NFL. So, but I will say with Revis, a guy like that, like that's not a name that I really would recall or kind of would stick out in my mind. So I think it's kind of along the lines of what, say, like the NFL Top 100 or Pro Bowl or all of these things. So much of it is a name game as opposed to not necessarily just the impact, but the name that you recall in the person. But no, I definitely think he's material and long overdue, and I don't even really see like the controversy or why there is.
Okay, I was just a little bit worried that you weren't saying anything over there.
1,000%. My favorite was every time someone says his name now in Germany, in Hofbrauhaus, there was a woman in there. She sees Ronde across the room. Our photographer told me this, and she immediately yells out, "Oh my God, it's Ronde Barber!"
Breaking out the accent.
Every time anyone says his name now, I'm like, "Oh my God, it's Ronde Barber!"
And then somebody thought you were the pretzel girl.
Yeah, yes. And it's like, sir, do I have a tray of pretzels around my neck? No, I do not. Why are you asking this?
You should have.
All right. I have a contention to make here. See how it flows. See how it goes with you guys and gals, and see if you disagree or have a different answer. In retrospect, I think the single biggest player acquisition of the entire season was Christian McCaffrey. A.J. Brown for me is a close second. Tyreek Hill was great, but San Francisco's offense is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's because they added a fourth guy to Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and Kittle, all of them who can do all kinds of different versatile things, and that Kyle Shanahan can scheme them up and get them open, and you just can't deal with all of those weapons.
Defend that.
I think McCaffrey took their offense, which was already pretty good, to a whole nother level, and that's why I think they got a very good shot of winning the Super Bowl.
And it ended up being even more important that happened because of the fact that you end up with quarterback injuries.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, man, if you're going to start a rookie Mr. Irrelevant, not a shabby group of people to put around him. I remember before we were going to play them, we talked about the fact that it almost didn't matter who was going to play quarterback. Yeah. And we were saying that before seeing what Brock Purdy was, which I now feel better about that loss, I'll be honest. That seemed way worse at the time. I mean, it was still bad, but now that we've seen what they've become, that they set it up where whoever their quarterback was going to be, you took off so much pressure off of their shoulders to create, to make happen. And yeah, I mean, everything about the NFL is about sort of misdirection or hiding things. That's one of the things we talked about we missed with Gronk was when you had him out there. You had no idea if it was pass or run because he was equally as good at both. You'd have him out there for both. And then whereas compared to now, maybe you send O'Keefe out there and has he caught some passes? Yes, but do you more likely know it's probably for blocking? Yeah. So I feel like the same is true with their offense of when you have Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, all these guys in there, you're like, look, I don't know who's doing what. I don't know what kind of run, pass, weird thing this could be. And that leaves defenses unable to really just pin their ears back and capitalize on one thing. So I think they really set Brock Purdy up for success. But I also think he's done incredibly well and looks great out there. But yeah, I think that knowing especially what they were going to have happen quarterback-wise, that made that addition even more important.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the 49ers are also a really good picture of how the league has changed. Because when you used to see like versatile on a scouting report, it had a negative connotation because a scout would put that on there to
like
describe a player
trades.
that really didn't excel at one thing. And so they kind of just lumped them into that category. But the positionless players that they have, Kyle Shanahan's system is based on creating, the yards after catch, creating the space. And they've done that so well with Kittle, with Deebo, now with McCaffrey. Even when you look at what Arthur Smith has done with Cordero Patterson, I mean, you're seeing guys like this pop up more and more and more around the league that are elite at so many different things and really are amazing at all of these things instead of just honing in on one thing. And it makes it almost impossible for a defense to be able to account for all of these things. And I think that's why, every single team, it was like the 49ers were the team that no one wanted to face. And they were already explosive, but then when you added McCaffrey to that equation, it's made them nearly impenetrable.
They have 4 of them. That's just my whole point. They have 4 of those guys.
Yep.
Nobody else has.
And you
4
see what
of those
Kittle
guys.
did against Dallas.
That ridiculous catch.
That was an awesome catch,
It
wasn't it?
really was cool.
Like
I love him so
circus.
much.
Yeah.
He just seems to be having more fun than anybody else while he plays football.
I thought the best part of the whole catch was at the end when he's been bouncing off his helmet in his hands, and he's still trying to pull it in, yet somehow, just as he gets a hold of it, he also kind of turns and doesn't take a big hit.
yeah, that was incredible.
I think my favorite was him winking and like smiling at the sky cam and like sticking out his tongue. It's like this guy just has so much fun. I love it.
When you're winning, you can have fun.
True.
So does anybody else think there was a bigger move?
Nope.
No.
I think at the beginning of the season you would have guessed Russell Wilson.
Well, you would,
Probably.
On paper, yes.
And I guess I should say he did make a gigantic impact.
Oh my God.
I
So
guess
salty.
my question would be, who do you think was the most impactful free agent pickup for us? Would you say it was Akeem Hicks?
Yeah, it wasn't really a big year for that, so there's not a lot of choices. I mean, Julio didn't play enough. Russell
True.
didn't play enough. So I think it was Hicks.
I'd agree.
I would agree.
And he missed, 5 games?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't have much luck in that area this season. Bringing guys in, and then they were able to stay healthy and play.
Well, then you had Russell Gage dinged up as well.
That was the unluckiest one because when you bring
Yeah.
in 30-somethings like Hicks and Julio Jones who've had injury issues, then you shouldn't be surprised by him. Russell Gage was the one that was kind of surprising.
Yeah, but then he came on. And
when he was healthy, he was good.
And then you realize why you have him. Yeah. And then we're happy that we talked about this last week. He was out of the hospital, and he's doing much better. So that's a plus, too.
Yeah.
Okay. I have another observation that is going to blow your all's minds.
Oh, wait.
Ooh.
Patrick Mahomes is really good. He's ridiculous.
I didn't realize we were going out on a limb
Did
on
you
this
see
podcast.
it? Hey, bring the heat if you're going to be on Salty
Yeah.
Dog.
Hot
That
take.
jump pass on the first
Wow,
drive.
and he was giving me crap about how the playoffs work.
But at least this is fun to talk about.
Oh my God.
That jump pass, he jumps and then fires like a 20-yard laser. That's not
Yeah.
supposed to be physically possible.
Yeah, that would
You
be like
need
a big
the
old
ground
no-no.
to push off of.
Patrick Mahomes is not who you should watch as a kid to figure out how to play this position.
That's because he played baseball.
Yeah, it's true though, and I think it's funny you said that. This is one of my like teeny tiny little soapboxes of like the need for specialization in sports, like at a younger and younger age, and I would argue against that.
Agreed. We've talked about that on this podcast.
Oh, I love it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would 100% argue against that, and I think that he is a great example of that because I agree with you. I think that looked almost like the shortstop fielding the grounder, like firing it all the way over to first kind of thing.
Right.
And then it's amazing because then it's like, oh, well, of course he can play on one leg. Like after you see that he can make throws like that, like just hop on one leg.
Yeah, you don't need to push off.
No, like it's of all people that you're like, okay, they're going to not be able to use one leg. Do you still want them in? Yes, yes, you do.
Yeah, that it is kind of scary though because he's not doing any motion. It's all arm now.
Yeah.
So
But he can.
But he can. Right.
Yeah,
But
there
how-
were definitely
but-
still some times he underthrew where you saw
Right.
it was affecting him. But yeah, again, of all people,
But I loved his passion about whether he gets to go in or not. And then it's kind of funny. It's kind of it doesn't have the effect when you take a winter coat
That's
and
what I was
try
gonna
to throw it on the ground.
That's
It
one of my
doesn't-
notes, Jeff.
It does not have the effect of a.
Were
of,
you
of
reading
a,
my notes?
of a
y'all have just been working together
know,
so long that
of
you're
a-
starting to think together.
of a Microsoft pad
Tablet, yes.
Or a
being
helmet.
thrown or a
Yes.
helmet, right? It doesn't bounce.
Yep.
Okay, so don't use it.
I had written down slamming a giant jacket doesn't work nearly as well as slamming a helmet.
I love that. Y'all
You're
are so
peaking.
cute.
No, I just laughed when I saw it. I was like, yeah, that's just kind of like
Unsatisfying.
that looked like a little kid. Like, I'm not going to wear this coat. I don't need it.
It's like if you were trying to storm out somewhere and then it turns out it's like a swinging door
Yeah.
and there's no door to slam. It's the equivalency
Yeah.
of that.
Well, have you seen the videos, the memes of him running around the pocket, and somebody equated it to their little toddler running around the living room?
He does
when
have an interesting
scrambles?
running style.
And it's fantastic. But I will say one of the things that's exciting, like you mentioned about watching him, is I don't think I've ever seen a quarterback that is able to disconnect their upper and lower body the way that the way that he does. Like the off-platform throws, one leg, and his
In
base,
midair.
no matter what it's doing, whatever the footwork is, he's able to get the right angle and get the ball off and get it to his target. And it's insane.
Yep.
So
Reminds me
is
of
he
when I was first learning broadcasting stuff in school, and they would teach us all these rules of what you can and can't do, and then they would say, well, once you've mastered all this, you can learn when to break the rules. That you don't.
That makes sense.
You don't get to break them until you've mastered them, and that's what I think of with Patrick Mahomes. Is, like I said, you'd never show what he did to a kid learning quarterback and be like, "This is what you should do." But because he mastered it and does it at a high level, then yeah, you get to break the rules once you've gotten to that point.
I like that analogy. Not analogy. I like that explanation a lot.
Thank you.
Also, to your specialization thing, we've talked about that on
Yeah.
our podcast, and I think it was because we had a player guest on, and we got into his background. And do you remember who that was?
I don't, but he was like adamant that you should
He had
play
played
a lot
all
of
the sports
stuff.
coming up.
Yeah.
Maybe it was Cade,
Yeah, maybe.
or maybe it was Devin Tompkins.
A couple of the new guys. Yeah,
Yeah.
we asked that.
I completely
question.
agree.
Well, and we've said it with Tristan, where he wrestled, and we've seen what a huge impact that's made. And then, heck, even Will Golston taking jiu-jitsu now.
Yeah, right.
And they've talked about the ways that that's helped them. And the same thing, Tristan also did the shot put and discus, I think.
Right.
And all these things that can help with some of that. I mean, we've seen with Tristan, his leverage, his body control, all that stuff is for sure things that wrestling and shot put and discus would have also helped with.
It's called recess. Just go
Right.
have fun.
Recess, yeah. Or like DBs that have transitioned from wide receiver gets like the route recognition, like ball tracking, all of those
Theoretically
things.
better
kind
hands.
Of, yeah, exactly.
So, go ahead.
No, you got something?
Well, no, I was wondering, are we going to do who we think is going to win the Super Bowl?
Is that one of your questions
one
for
of
your
yours.
part?
No, it's not.
Well, first
Well,
of
we
all,
don't
before
need to
we
do
get
that.
off,
we don't need to do that. It was just because we were talking about Kansas City and. Go ahead.
before we get off Mahomes, the other thing I wrote down, there was a play.
Scott writes a lot of stuff.
Jarek
down.
McKinnon is not a very big running back. He's like 6'0", 180, something like that. He's a scat back. He's a throw the ball to the guy back. He made such an incredible block for Mahomes. He pancaked some oncoming edge rusher, knocked him to the ground.
Speaking
Love it.
of that, I have to talk about Micah Parsons throwing Mike McGlinchey.
I don't think I saw that.
Oh my gosh. If you have not, Google this.
Okay.
Literally one arm
Yeah.
throws.
Oh, I did see that.
Yes. Like a whole offensive lineman, just like one arm.
It just tossed him aside.
Tossed him.
Yeah.
That was outrageous. And again, made me feel better about some of the plays that happened against him. When you said the pancake thing, it just like that popped back into my brain of that. And there's a freeze frame of it where McGlinchey's just in midair. And you just see Micah Parsons has one arm on him, just ready to look.
It's
It
like
was
when
crazy.
It's like when guys stiff arm somebody else into oblivion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like a Derrick Henry kind of moment. Yeah. Or
That was cool.
Rashad White in Seattle against Seattle. Moment.
There you go.
That's the
You know
new-
who else got trucked or pancaked this weekend was Ezekiel Elliott.
Yes. that whole play, that whole the
Scott's giggling.
I mean, seriously, just At what point did you think this was going to be a good idea?
I'm so happy that play happened because I have been reading articles and listening to podcasts about it ever since, in the days since. And, I mean, it is giving the NFL coverage world so much glee to just break this down and have your type of reaction, Jeff. Like, what did they think was going to happen?
Here's the problem. They practiced it.
They must have, right?
How crazy is that? Because McCarthy said it didn't go according to plan. Oh, really?
What was the plan?
Brilliant.
You don't say.
Brilliant.
My favorite, though, was that it was deja vu from the year before when they played the 49ers, and it was the QB draw with 14 seconds left, and you have no timeouts, and they can't get it snapped, and it's the uproar, and that season goes up in flames. And then it was
that was a time
once
management issue, though.
Yeah.
This was a conscious decision to do something crazy. Do you guys remember a few years ago the crazy Indianapolis Colts play? It was the fake punt where they motioned like everybody, all the linemen out to the side, and then they had the gunner come on. He was a tight end, I think, come over and long snap to the punter. No, to a tight end or something. And there was nobody else blocking. And the reason, and then so they just snapped it, and the two defenders that were right there just jumped immediately on him. And you go, why couldn't that work? Well, the official explanation on that one was that play was never supposed to be snapped. And the guy who had come
Minor
over,
detail.
the guy who had come over to do the snap was actually replacing the guy they'd practiced it with because that guy got hurt. So he'd never done this.
Oh, gosh.
So he's the one who messed up the play because all they were trying to do was either get them to jump off sides or to try to think they're going defense, running their guys off, and they're trying to get in some more players and they can catch them with too many men on the field. It was 3rd and 3, so we're trying to get a free 5 yards.
I'm just imagining they're telling him, whatever you do, don't snap it. And he gets out there and he's like, wait, did they say snap it or don't snap it? I don't remember now.
You can see, I just watched it again yesterday, and you can see the quote-unquote quarterback. You can see the utter shock on his face when that ball hits his hands. He's like, whoa, that wasn't supposed to happen. So in this Dallas play, maybe Ezekiel, maybe Tony Pollard got hurt in that game. Maybe Tony Pollard was originally going to snap the ball. And I don't know, but I don't know how that would change anything.
No.
Oh, that would make it worse, I think.
But you have to go back when they kicked off. He fair catches it on the 6-yard line. Why would you do that? Yeah. Why wouldn't you just let it bounce in? And go to
it's easier to start from the 6 than the 2 is the point.
Yeah.
But I hear you.
I'd take the chances. Because it's a 4-yard difference. It's apparently with the game plan they had, it wasn't going to matter. So just throwing it out there.
I just love
Easter pork.
I love when those plays happen because you know you're going to remember and talk about them forever. And this one happens, and you start talking about the Indianapolis one because it was so unbelievable. And then you start talking about the Washington Commanders and their swinging gate play of 12 years ago.
But when you look at but you look, there's 3 things that happen for Dallas. He does a fair catch, then to step out of bounds, you have to be going forward, and he steps back, and then catch the ball, make sure you have both feet in so that you can then step out of bounds.
It was not a good end of the game for Dalton Schultz.
No, it just unraveled. So there you go. Where were they Monday night? Which is hard to believe. That's only 8 days or 10 days, 9 days ago.
A lot longer.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, it feels like an eternity.
It turns into dog years in the offseason.
Yes, so much. Okay, go ahead.
All right.
I will say, we were talking about San Francisco and how good they are offensively. Defensively, I mean,
incredible.
Come on. Number 54, Warner, that dude is lightning fast. Fred Warner.
He controls the middle of the field better than any linebacker.
He is, I mean, that's a John Lynch defense. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You
Also,
can tell
just
he's
props
got his
to
hand.
John Lynch in general. I'm just so happy that, like, if I basically said that if we were not going to make it, 49ers were for sure my team I was rooting for. And a big part of that was because of John Lynch. I mean, also, they're just fun to watch when it's not against us. They're fun to watch. And I just am so impressed by him. And I remember even when he was getting hired, everyone like, oh, he hasn't, he comes from TV over there, and and just the wondering how he was going to do when he hadn't done the more traditional route of up through scouting, up through this, up there, and I feel like he's just done such an amazing job with what he's built over there, and I mean,
can't argue with the results.
Yeah,
No.
such a great guy, and just very happy for him.
Just a good person,
Yeah,
a good person all the way across the board.
I remember that's one of my John Lynch stories is that, like, right after I started here, Scott and I think, had done one interview with him where I'd only met him one time, I think. And then I was at the combine, and he was walking by. And, of course, there's all these reporters and people. Like, anytime there's, like, a coach or a GM or anyone walking through the combine, there's, like, a whole herd of people sort of going with them. I was absolutely not going to say anything to him. I didn't think he'd even know who I was. And he, as I start to walk by, just was like, "Hey, Casey, how's it going?" And I just remember thinking, like, what a testament that was to who he was, of knowing who I was, remembering my name, and choosing to say hi even when that was not a requirement and everything. I remember that being my first experience of, like, wow, like, what
That's
a great
cool.
guy. Yeah.
Bree, has John Lynch ever said hello to you?
He is not.
But if
You're
he
the
has
only one in the
chance-
room.
I
Hey,
know.
I still get Christmas cards from John Lynch. I do.
That's
Oh, my
great.
God,
It's very
that's-
sweet.
But yeah, but you know, what's funny is when John came. Well, how long ago was that?
1993.
Scott? 1993. Okay, so I met John Lynch 1993. Here we are, 30
How old
years
were you,
later.
Bree, in 1993?
Negative?
Oh, Bree was not born.
There
I
it
was negative too.
That's my favorite part of coming on Salty Dogs, is doing that at least once.
That
And
I've been working here for her entire lifespan.
Wow, wow.
that was my choice to be salty at that point. Thank
I
you, Bree,
guess.
for providing
Wow.
that.
I guess I put that on
Anytime.
the tee.
You
Right,
did.
you teed it up for them, yep.
Wow.
Set that up. Anytime
All
you're
right.
going to start doing the back in 1990, then you know I'm going to do that.
But what I'm saying is it's fun to watch a guy actually be a kid and then grow up and still be a good person with all the success he had.
Yep.
And that's not always the case. So
Yeah.
there's that.
Very true.
Well, should we be getting to their half of the show soon here?
Sure.
Oh man, time
Whatever-
for
That-
Tampa
just-
2 to take over.
Well, just let me quickly go through the last little bits of notes I have
All right.
to do extended. Watching Doug Peterson coach reminded me, and do a great job this year, reminded me that Doug Peterson was in my apartment one time.
When you were down in Miami?
No, here.
Really? In your apartment before you rented it, or he rented it before you?
Dave Moore brought him over to a party that we were having. So,
That's because
as a head coach that's alive in these playoffs, been in your apartment? Well, they're not anymore.
no. I've only had one apartment in my life. Two. What I was going to say is
Flex.
he was Dave Moore's roommate in
That's probably why he
Miami.
brought him by.
Yeah, because he was talking about that.
I
So does he go by you and say hi, Scott?
I don't think he remembers who I am.
Oh, okay.
I think of one of Joe Burrow's audibles at the line I heard was Lucky Charms. Did you guys hear that?
I did not, but I would
God.
love
Pretty
that.
sure that one of them was Lucky Charms.
I
That
will
is
also
fantastic.
explain that I used to eat Lucky Charms all the time, and I am so OCD that I would eat all of the non-marshmallow pieces first, and then therefore leave all the marshmallows
Yep.
till last.
Yep.
Yep. Same. Love it.
And then
Okay.
you had the little puddle of marshmallows. Best part.
Yep.
Hot take then? I think the cereal part is better than the marshmallow part.
You would. Why am I not surprised by
think
that?
They're
Wait.
squeaky on they're squeaky on your teeth.
That is the worst cereal ever.
Wait. Yes.
Both of you
Oh,
are
you don't
having
like it?
terrible takes.
So, okay, they came out with a Fruit Loops with marshmallows, and that was the best dang cereal.
That sounds
Oh my
terrible.
gosh. The Lucky Charm part is seriously the worst cereal. How
No, it tastes good.
Why would you
It's
want
not-
it? It gets soggy in the milk.
Yeah.
Well,
Why would you
eat it
enjoy
quick
that?
enough? You just have to eat it quickly enough.
It's all
And
about
anyway, you don't
speed
necessarily have to put
Okay,
it in a bowl of milk.
I have a question. Do they have Lucky Charms in?
They have had them. I don't know if they have them right
Yeah, I
now.
don't know if they have them
They
now.
do have Cocoa Puffs now.
Cocoa
I would
Puffs.
not-
and they
I would
have
never
the
eat that.
phenomenal.
They have the toasted grams and the Apple
Phenomenal.
Jacks.
Just
They-
saying.
you got the good selection.
Yeah,
not
one
in
of
there.
those you're obsessed with, right? The
Yep.
honey grams.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Big
all
big
sugary
fan of honey
cereal.
grams.
See, when I was a kid, we would get out the box of the bottles. We'd get out the bottles and just get wasted. We'd get out the box of Fruit Loops and eat it as a snack in the afternoon while watching like cartoons or something.
Oh, I do
the
that
ideal
with
kid day.
Honey Nut Cheerios.
Really?
Oh yeah.
What'd you say?
I just said that's the ideal kid day of
Yeah.
like thinking of like just like whatever sugary cereal and cartoons. You're just like living your best life. Makes me want to do that right now.
What else you got?
When Daniel Jones' contact came out, I think it was the announcer might have been Darrell Johnston, who I'm usually not a big fan of. He immediately nailed the line. He said, "It's a contact sport."
I paused it and alerted my whole family and made them all, because like people were kind of doing other things, and I was the only one sitting there at that moment. And I made my mom, dad, and fiance all come in, and I rewound it to play that of like saying, like, guys, listen to this epic dad joke that was made. I loved it so much.
Timing perfect. It
And
was
as someone who
no
wears
notes.
contacts, I'm like, I need to be able to use this at some point. Like, I'm just storing it back in there. But also, again, from that point of the contact thing, and like Darrell Johnson, I don't know if it was him or I forget the guy's name that's his partner broadcast. Joe Smith, maybe?
I don't remember.
It also feels like I just came up with
He's
a
the
basic
LA,
name.
He's the no, it's Joe.
Joe something.
He's the Dodgers play-by-play guy. Joe.
Is it not Smith? I don't know. That just seemed like.
I'll look it up. You keep
Okay,
talking.
thanks. So one of them, Joe Davis.
Okay, but stop for a second. Give us the whole joke so everybody understands what the whole joke
So
is.
his
Joe
contact,
Davis.
Yeah, Joe Davis. There you
his
go.
contact falls out, and Darrell Johnson, while talking about this, watching him try to put back in, says, "Well, it is a contact sport."
Okay.
It's
Nailed it.
amazing.
Nailed it.
No notes.
Nailed it.
Can't improve that.
No notes. But also just watching Daniel Jones have to do this, I was like, as someone who wears contacts, that is a nightmare scenario.
Because it's probably got grass
It's
and
got
stuff on it.
crap all over it.
That's what I couldn't figure out, and I don't know if I'd be that quick to be putting it in with
And
my
then
own
that's
hand
so much
because
pressure.
my hands have been on the ball and
Oh,
the
yeah.
grass.
People-
And then
licking
it's
their
going to
hands.
get
Oh, yeah.
dry because it doesn't have the solution.
Well, they
You don't
gave
have-
him some solution, I think. But yeah, and which would help some. But yeah, your hands aren't clean. The contact isn't clean. It gets dry. It's harder to put in at that point. And then just like the pressure of like you're doing this timed. Like you're trying so hard to get back out there and knowing everyone is watching you doing this. And putting a contact in is not something you can do fast if you like you might poke yourself in the eye. Anyways, I was watching all that. I was stressed on his behalf, and he just put that sucker back in and ran back out there, and I was very impressed.
I feel like that's an eye infection waiting to happen.
Absolutely. I was like, you got to throw that contact away immediately after
Didn't
the
think
game.
you'd get that much mileage out of that, did you?
Yeah, of course. Before we get too deep into how horrifying this is, just remember Ronnie Lott once had part of his finger cut off.
Well, he cut it off.
Well, he allowed it to be happening.
Yeah, he allowed it to be amputated. He didn't lose it on the field.
No, he fractured really badly, and if they didn't cut it off, then he
Couldn't play.
He wanted to play in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Nope. I'm out. I can't. I'm sorry. There is nothing in life that I need to be doing that badly. Props to people that have that dedication to football. I'm telling you, if all of a sudden it was like, Casey, you can't broadcast unless you cut. I'm sorry. We're not. It's not happening. It's not happening. We're having
Even if it was like the Super Bowl.
I think
It was his pinky finger.
Oh, well, in that case.
And it was amputated from the first joint up. So they told him, you got two choices. You can put a pin in there, and it will heal in 2 months, but you'll miss the rest of the playoffs. Or we can chop it off, and you can play.
And since it wasn't the thumb, it's not a problem because if you lose your thumb, then your hand kind of just.
I mean, yeah, it's
now-
only
yeah.
your pinky.
So.
All right. Well,
All right.
that's a good place to end the Salty Dogs portion of the show. I now officially hand over the reins to Casey and Bree. And as we head into
Tampa 2.
God, we're going into uncharted waters for sure.
Yeah.
it's uncharted.
Whatever. I have no idea where
Everybody
we are.
says that wrong. It's not uncharted. That would mean like somebody hadn't chartered a boat for you and taken you there. Charted. Nobody has charted the waters.
We learn something new every day.
Don't get us started in the conversation on chunk and chuck.
Yeah, that's just weird. That's just a regional thing.
Which Tom Brady in one of his tweets the other day, I saw he said chuck, and I was like, I feel attacked.
Oh, you're a chunket?
Yes.
I think that's a Texas thing.
But it's a Texas thing.
I agree.
Like my whole family says chunk. Like I chunk it over there.
I will
Like
say,
someone told me they said chuck, and I was like, excuse me? That doesn't even.
You said something the other day that you clearly got from Tom Brady, though. Instead of saying red zone, you said red area. And he says red area. Oh, maybe it was you.
No, I don't think it was me. I don't think I've ever
I thought
said
it was.
that.
I thought it was you. You said red area.
That's funny.
Because remember, he said red area. That's what he says. He never
Yeah.
says red zone. He says red area.
Sure, it's not the green zone.
Yes.
Wasn't there a coach that used to call it that? Didn't we have somebody that wanted to call it that?
I think that's the whole field is the green zone.
Or it may
Like
have,
green means go?
Yes.
I feel like you kind of just take on other people's their vernacular, like their verbiage. You
Well,
just
Tom
kind of
Brady
bring
would
it on.
know.
Right? Or it may have been the fact that I had already used that, and I was trying to use like a different word
Yeah.
or a different term.
Right.
Mix things up. You know?
Always good with the
keep
writing.
it. Yeah.
This isn't
You're like
a very good training.
right-click thesaurus.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, our Salty Dogs approach to this podcast is leaking into
It is.
your portion. So
All right,
take it away.
Get it together, people.
That means we were very influential.
Or
Is that what it means?
We went first. I think
Yes.
that's what
All
it
right.
is.
So for all of the people who normally listen to Salty Dogs and have not listened to Tampa 2, we are a wee bit more organized than they are. We have set topics we go through each week. A lot of our wow.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. So here's the thing. Most of our topics are irrelevant now that they were very based on previous game, upcoming game, injury reports, things of that nature. So we took our typical topics and we sort of amended them for what we could do now. So instead of doing a look back at the previous game, we thought we would start with top season takeaways. So looking at the season overall, and for each of you guys, what are the things that most stand out to you if you were going to be writing a sort of Cliff Notes version of this season? Who has some top takeaways?
The personnel changes on offense completely changed the season.
Yeah.
I mean, what we should have expected from the season. To me, that's the story of the season.
Yep.
Defense had its ups and downs, but I think was probably good enough for this team to have gone farther and to have won more games. But the inconsistencies on offense never went away, and it only really came together in a specific game a couple times all year. Otherwise, it was a struggle all year, and it's because teams change, personnel changes, and every one of us could sit here and list the players that changed, but I think everybody knows. That's my big takeaway.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I just think, like you mentioned, like on offense, they just never reached that full potential. And you saw the spurts of it, which I think was the most frustrating part, like week 1 against Dallas or Seattle or the first half against Cincinnati, which, of course, in the second half was probably the worst half of football that they arguably played. And it was just kind of a combination of everything. You had the injuries along the offensive line. You had the protection issues. You had the lack of the running game. I mean, gosh, Tom Brady averaged, I think, like 52 attempts over the last month.
Crazy.
I mean, had 66 attempts again in the wild card round. I mean, that's about as unbalanced as you can get. But you can't really put your finger on really one part of it. It was just kind of a combination of everything that didn't end up being, they were consistently inconsistent throughout the year.
Yeah, we never got to see the team that was on paper. We never, because of the injuries, we never got to see the team that was on paper, which was the team that everyone thought was going to roll, close to 13 wins that they did the previous year, and you were feeling really good about it. I think the closest we got to being healthy was the first game in Dallas, and then we lost Julio then. Hicks.
Yeah.
And then
even Donovan got hurt that game.
Yeah, and I don't think Donnie played healthy all year, which a lot of guys don't. But I will say this: there are teams, and Cincinnati, for example, who has a almost entirely new offensive line for the Buffalo game, and they did a terrific job. So, as much as you want to go injuries, geez, poor us, no one cares. That's just the way it is. Right. But I feel bad that we didn't get to see what was on paper, and we're not going to.
Yeah, I think my takeaways were sort of a combination of what you guys said. It was just the lack of a run game that, you're last in the league in rushing yards per game, last in rushing yards before contact. That one I thought was pretty tough. And so then, it leads to Brady breaking pass attempt records all over the place. And then it was interesting because he was, third in the league among QBs in passing yards, right? Makes sense. He threw all the time. But he was tied for the second lowest in team yards per attempt. So it's not only that you don't have a run game, it's that you're having to throw so many times, and they're just these tiny little, plays of just these short yardage situations, which is going to require you to have 1,000 plays to get down the field, which is going to also just lend itself to more chances for penalties, chances for things to go wrong. Like, you just not having those big chunk plays as often is really tough. And I looked at the bottom 6 teams that are right around them in that lowest yards per attempt in passing. It's the Cardinals, Texans, Jets, Colts, Steelers, and Rams. The cumulative record of that is 32-68. Only one team out of that group had an over 500 record. So obviously that is a stat that does not lend itself to tons of success when you're having to just throw a million tiny little short passes and not getting more of those chunk plays. So that was for me, knowing how much that's something that, Brady and Mike Evans loved to be able to do, and other guys, and we thought that we were going to have some more of those deep threats. We saw that, like you said, JR, with not getting to see the team on paper, to not see Julio Jones getting to try that a little bit more often. We did see against Seattle that he might have still had that in him if he had been able to be healthy. Yeah, so that was the one for me. It was just the struggling with the run game, and then the itty bitty little short passes over and over and over and over and over.
Jeff, did you know we were supposed to do that much research? There's not going to be a quiz at the end, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I can't remember all those numbers.
Like I said, it's a whole different show.
Whole different ball game over here.
All right, what's next?
So next, we typically do
But good stuff, Casey. It was good stuff.
Thank you. So what we typically would do next would be the keys to the upcoming game. And so I amended that to be keys for this off-season or storylines to watch. Obviously, we already talked a little bit about Brady. We know that's the thing. Let's not dwell on that even more. So outside of the Brady storyline, or maybe things that could potentially affect for you guys, what are the keys to the off-season or storylines you guys are excited to watch?
I went first last time, so
okay.
I could take the
All
obvious
right,
one.
well, for me, it's the lines, offense and defensive lines. I think that's going to be the key for this team to move forward. And how they do that, I am not sure. We've heard Todd Bowles talk about need better edge rushing.
Yeah.
Whether it's the guys we currently have, whether they need to step up, whether they need to work on it during the offseason, how to get faster, how to be more nimble. But I think nothing else is going to work for this team unless the O-line and the D-line is addressed. I think that is going to be because we have proved that you could have one of the greatest quarterbacks ever and not have a good O-line as well as it was during the Super Bowl year and have him struggle.
And last year when 3 guys went to the Pro Bowl.
Correct. Oh, yeah. And, we keep forgetting that part. That there were 3 Pro Bowl guys, not you, Scott, but we, general, other than Scott Smith.
Collective we.
Yes.
Well, to me, okay, I get that the quarterback's a big story. I get that you have to fix the lines. But the underlying issue here that is going to color all of those efforts is the salary cap. To me, that's the biggest story outside of quarterback and maybe who the offensive coordinator is. The Buccaneers are right now, with the contracts that we have for next season and the dead money that we have on some expiring contracts, we're $55 million over the cap.
Yeah.
Things have to change. We may have to lose some people. We may have to rework some other contracts and get them, again, kick the can down the road a little bit. Do you want to do that if you don't get Tom Brady back and you're not sure how much of a contender you're going to be? Decisions like this have to be made, and we're not going to be privy to them being made, but we're going to see the results. You have to figure out the cap. And Mike Green, obviously we got great people, Mike Greenberg and them to do so, Jackie. And then you still have to worry about not all of them, but we have like 23 pending unrestricted free agents. And that includes Levante, Tom Brady, of course, not Carlton Davis,
but
Jamel Dean.
If Tom Brady comes back, he helps the cap issue.
It
gets to go kick down the road, but he helps it out a great deal.
Right, because it would be a $35 million dead cap hit if he leaves.
Yeah.
If he retires, you can actually kick part of it down the road. Yeah.
But still.
Yeah. I would basically say mine's a combination of all that. The Tom Brady situation, offensive coordinator, and
she really did her homework
that
on this one.
big O list of free agents.
So it's like we're all at the ice cream store getting desserts, and each 3 of us ordered, and you just said, "I'll have all of that."
No, she goes, "I want Napoleon."
What is that from?
Neapolitan?
Or Neapolitan.
Oh, okay. I thought you were quoting something because that I was like, that's very funny because Napoleon is very funny. I just assumed that was a quote.
Okay, I will say my mom makes a mean Neapolitan fudge at Christmas where it's actually it's raspberry, not strawberry, and then the vanilla and then the chocolate. There is a ridiculous amount of cream cheese in that fudge, but let me tell you, it's addicting.
I'm not big on fudge.
Oh, you would be on this one, Scott.
JR just had to turn his cough thing on.
You would be on
He's
this
actually
one.
took his headset off.
Yeah, he quit. I'll try to get us back on the rails. Okay,
sorry.
So my keys for the off-season or storylines to watch because you guys took all of those. I wrote like 5 because I was like, I know if I go last.
They can't take them all.
Yeah. I mean, definitely the free agent one is fascinating, especially on the defensive side of just the idea of I did research again, which I feel like now I'm going to get made fun of for.
No, we're complimenting you.
That of our entire defense, the free agents we have account for 36 of the 59 passes defensed this year and 8 of the 10 interceptions. And I'm like,
Ooh,
oh boy.
love that,
10's not even a great number.
10 is not a great number,
Is that
but when
good?
8 out of the 10, 8 out of the 10. So a huge chunk of the passes defensed and almost all the interceptions are among people who could become unrestricted free agents.
My quick math tells me that's 80%.
Look at
of the
you.
interceptions.
Look at
Well, almost
you.
your entire starting
that Northwestern education.
secondaries on that list.
So because again, you guys kind of already talked about that. My other one that my sort of dark horse candidate for off-season storylines to watch is will Bowles call the defensive plays next year? I talked a little bit about this on Tampa 2 last week because he did in his season-ending presser, he was asked about this, and he said something about how he's not a guy, I don't have the direct quote in front of me right now, but he's not a guy that has to control everything, and they'll take a look at all the options. And then he said, we might even let some of the guys call it in preseason, which tells me that A, he said people plural, like there are multiple people he's considering for this role. B, that it is not something we might have the answer to until almost the start of the regular season. It sounds like preseason might almost be a bit of an audition for it, and then maybe he keeps it if he doesn't like what happens. But to me, that's going to be really interesting to watch. Is there an audition for defensive play calling in preseason, and what that could look like this whole offseason as we watch everything from OTAs to minicamp and how this defense could look, and him trying, because again, we talked about last year, he didn't have time to hand the reins off if he'd wanted to. So does he want to? Who would it potentially be for? When would we know those things? I think that's going to be really interesting to watch.
It's a good one.
Yeah, but I don't think you can wait until preseason.
I'm just saying what he said.
I think if you're gonna if you say, hey, I'm not going to call plays, Scott, you're calling plays, or you're going to call
That
the
would
defense.
be a bad decision.
Well, it would be, but you got to go all in from the off season. You can't have someone go, okay, I'm doing this, and your players are thinking you're going to be the DC, and then after because we've lived that before, where we changed DCs in the middle of the season because it didn't go well.
We've done it in training camp because the guy left.
Well, there was that too. Yeah,
I think it was a health thing.
yeah, it was with Raheem, was it not?
Yeah, I can't remember the first coach's name.
But I think with what direction Todd's going to go, and it stuck in my head, he made the comment that one of the things he learned about being a head coach the first time and the second time. The first time, he was trying to please people. And he realized that in order to be him, he just needs to do what's best for him, and you can't please everybody.
Also, can we just say snaps for that as a whole life philosophy? Like, let's all learn from that. Let's not worry about pleasing people. Just do what works for you. There you go. We're getting deep here on Salty Dogs.
This is not a Salty Dog segment.
Good food for thought, Kate.
I will
Food for
say-
thought tie-in.
Yeah.
I will say that on the highly successful youth flag football team that my friends and I coached, I was the defensive coordinator.
He
I was
always
the
gets, when I
Ooh.
played, go ahead.
I love
What?
this.
But yes. But
I
when
ran the defense on during games.
Right.
Well, when I called plays for my little girls basketball team I
Yep.
coached, the plays were called Fuzzy Wuzzy and Bananarama. I highly suggest introducing that as maybe an audible option.
Tell Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I'll throw that in with Lucky Charms.
Fuzzy Wuzzy
Yep.
And
was a bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy had no hair.
And Bananarama. They were.
Fuzzy Wuzzy wasn't very fuzzy, was it?
Oh my gosh.
That was really the goal. And they were actually from when my dad coached my team when I was little. That was the name of the plays back then. So I brought them back now
That's nice.
for my kids.
Yep.
I love this.
It was very entertaining. So that's I'm going to go suggest that, to Bowles and say, hey,
Okay.
just have some good names I feel like might encourage things. All right. So our next topic.
All righty.
Our next topic. Normally, we would do a player to watch in the next game. So instead, we're going to do most improved player this season. Bree, why don't you go first?
Especially since you just wrote about this today.
Yeah, we just wrote about
She's
this in
ready.
our
She's going to have numbers.
point counterpoint
I think
discussion.
everybody's going pretty much with the same player, but go ahead.
I'm going to go with Jamel Dean on
bingo.
this one.
I
ding,
have
ding,
a
ding.
different answer.
Do you?
Yes.
Ooh, yeah,
so
you
go
I do
ahead.
too.
But I think
He was one of them, though.
he's really improved every single year. So, I feel like a lot of times most improved is maybe somebody who hasn't played as well in the past, but he's had a great resume since he's been in Tampa Bay. But I think he really just hit another level this year. And I think what's really indicative is you look at PFF came out with their top upcoming free agents, and Jamel Dean was listed as number one. He's a guy that's been
Among corners.
Yes, among upcoming corner free agents. But he's just a guy that's been extremely underrated, but he's become really the Bucs' number one lockdown corner. I mean, this is a guy that he's disruptive on releases. He can go guys deep on go routes. He has fluidity in and out of breaks, and really just has all of those things. And I think he was the guy that really impressed throughout training camp. And even though, Sean Murphy-Bunting got a lot of the reps with the ones, that he was a guy that they ended up going with to start opposite Carlton Davis. And yeah, he had some dingers with injuries this year, but I think all in all, he's a guy that really stepped up when they needed him in the secondary and made big plays.
If you want to get a little depressed about free agency.
Oh, yes, that sounds fun. Let's do
I
that.
looked up the thing that Bree was just referring to, PFF's top 50 free agents, should they hit free agency, and 3 of the top 7 are Buccaneers. Tom Brady at 3,
Ooh.
Jamel Dean at 6,
Levante.
and Levante at 7.
But yeah, he just has that blend of, the size, speed, athleticism, physicality.
Yeah, I think Jamel's the
Great
top corner in the league in terms of who could be a free agent.
That's according to this list.
Yeah.
One thing I would say about Jamel and the title of most improved is that I think some of this isn't necessarily a huge jump that he made this year, but people are recognizing it now. Because if you look at those same sorts of numbers that you were referring to from NFL Next Gen Stats, he has allowed the fewest yards per target of any corner in the league for the last 4 years combined.
Wow.
So he's been pretty good all along. Maybe he made a little leap this year, and Coach Bowles said so to Casey when she asked him this question.
Yep.
So it's a good pick.
Yeah, and for him to earn that starting role. And I think, to me, what's so interesting about Jamel is just the ways we've seen him improve over the course of his whole career. I mean, I think back to his first year in that really unfortunate game against Seattle, and he just took that and was like, you know what? I've got to figure out how to learn this game. And that's what he's talked about, is that he learned how to learn, essentially, and spent so much time with Coach Bowles, spent so much time learning how to watch film and how to prepare differently. And he really credits that with a lot of his success, is that I think just the mental side, because we've known he's got the physical. I mean, the guy is big and tall and fast and just incredible in terms of from the physical side. So he seems to really have put the mental part together. And that's what's been so nice about having Coach Bowles, your whole time here, essentially, to help him learn this system even better. And yeah, I think the mental side is where we've really seen him grow. Was Jamel your pick, JR?
Yeah. Yep.
Any further thoughts on him?
All that y'all said.
Scott, you said you had a different pick?
Well, I guess if it, like on your list where we picked them all off, I think Jamel's the best answer. And the other answer that Coach said when you asked him this was Anthony Nelson.
Yep, that was who I was going to say.
So he and you could tell us about him. But another guy, I would say, because we're writing about this today, I looked at our depth chart trying to come up with candidates. I really couldn't find a lot because guys have performed for you very well and were big parts of the real success this season, like Chris Godwin, Tristan Wirfs, Tom Brady, Levante David. Were they better than before? I don't know if I can make that argument. Right. So the only other one I came up with, and it's because you probably going into the season did not expect Nick Leverett to make 9 starts. Now, I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you that Nick Leverett was a Pro Bowl guard. I'm sure he had his ups and downs, but Coach would always talk about how much he fights, how he helps set a tone, and he made 9 starts at left guard for a team that, while they didn't run very well, did have pretty good pass protection from time to time. So he'd be my pick.
Yeah, and thrown into a situation that was, he's basically auditioning all preseason for center, for guard, for this, for that, and just getting thrown all over the place. And then, I think he just handled the situation really well. And also, I just always love being able to brag on him, another great guy. And he was not a guy that was, super highly drafted coming out of college or anything. And sometimes people, that means they don't know as much about them prior to coming here. And I just love bragging on the fact that he was part of the All-State Good Works team. And that is a roster of, I think, 22 people from all of college football across the whole country of all levels, based on how much work you've done in the community and made a difference.
Wow.
And he made that team.
I didn't know that.
Yep. So I just love bragging on him for that he's just like such a solid dude. He, even since getting here, he let a practice squad guy borrow his car. He just gave him a car. He had 2 and just gave this practice squad guy a car because he didn't have one and was having to Uber to the facility.
Oh, geez.
He's bought random people gas or food. He'll find homeless people, do things for them. And it's most of this goes, of course, very under the radar and unrecognized. So I love whenever you have a guy like that where he really, he became kind of like the Nacho of the offense, where he was so much of the energy guy. And so he brought a lot to the team that wasn't just the X's and O's.
Right.
So shout out to Nick Leverett.
Well, and just going back to kind of what you said on the mental aspect, and I don't remember if it was Jason Light that told you this or if it was John Spytek, but about they like to draft guys that have been through things because you're going to hit turmoil and hardship in the NFL. And so if they draft a guy that's never been through anything, well, you don't know how he is going to react to being in those situations.
Yeah, that was Jason Light.
And I think Jamel Dean is a really good example of that, and you've seen his mindset, because he was a guy that didn't think he'd ever play down a football again.
Well, he told him at Ohio State that he couldn't play, right?
Yeah.
And
that he'd never play again?
They gave him a 3% chance of playing. I thought that was such a weird number to
And then he
pick.
had, like, after the back-to-back ACL, like, all of these things, and he was in, like, a really dark place. You know, I mean, he told me, like, he would have days where he was in his dorm room, like, lights off, just in a very doom and gloom thing, and his family's really what got him through, and just his love of the game came back. And to see him playing at this peak performance now, I mean, he brought Carlton Davis to tears in the locker room, who, you know, was his teammate at Auburn, but just to see the strides that he's made, I think, and with the mentality and the mindset that he has and the appreciation for the game, because he knows what it's like to not know what that next step is or if he'll ever be able to play it down again. And so I feel like you see that in his play.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, yeah, just to put a bow on it, my pick was Anthony Nelson. I think Jamel is a great pick because I do think that he has more of an impact on the defense overall than Anthony Nelson. So in that sense of the picking him as the most improved. But kind of like you said, it felt like Jamel wasn't necessarily a guy where it had been this like huge leap. It was kind of over the years. So for me, Anthony Nelson, when you look at the fact that he had 48 tackles in his first 3 years and 46 this year.
Wow.
He had 6 sacks in his first 3 years combined. He had 5.5 this year. So when you look at all of his stats for those first 3 years as compared to this year, and the same thing, 1 forced fumble in his first 3 years, 3 this year.
Practically in back-to-back games.
Yeah. I felt like what he did stepping in after you lose Shaq was absolutely massive. And his plays he made were at absolutely massive times. His ability to strip sack was amazing. So, yeah, that was my pick for most improved. Okay, so now we're going to talk about a game we are excited for next year as we look ahead to the schedule.
The schedule?
The schedule.
My audio seems like it's off.
What do you mean?
Oh, no, it just...
You there? We hear you just fine.
Okay, all right.
So, Brady, you have
Well, I am going to go.
Is it better there,
Yeah,
Scotty?
no, you turned it way up.
Okay. Wow. It
So
is
everybody yell in
up,
Scott's ear.
down, up, down. Are you
we
good
talked
now?
about this team earlier, but I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills game. I am ready for that. And regardless of how...
In Buffalo.
Depending on what time of
And
year
I'm
that
just going to
happens.
say,
Woof.
I don't know why I have always wanted this, and I'm really sorry for my coworkers that are on the field, either working camera
want a
or
snow
being
game.
the photographer, but I want a dadgum snow game.
Yep. We've never had one in my time here.
I just think that would be
It'd be so
incredible. Sitting up there, seeing the snow flurries, drinking some hot cocoa.
This is like sitting at home.
That's like football weather. I think it's great.
Unless we put you on the sideline, what's the experience?
But, I mean, regardless of how their season ended, I think they've just become one of those perennial AFC powerhouses. And I think going up there, playing them would be a really good measuring stick game and a really big confidence booster if you could go in there, beat the Bills. So that is what I'm looking forward to.
I hear they have good wings up there.
We actually went to that bar, Anchor, whatever.
We went to Anchors, went to 911, which was really, really good.
I remember thinking
There's
that
the big
was...
tree. Yeah.
I thought that was like more of a joke of like, Buffalo wings. And then I was like, it can't really be like that big
That's
of a
where
thing.
they came from.
And then I got there and I opened my curtains of my hotel room and all I could see was a wing place. That was the only thing out my window, and it just made me laugh.
3 of the 4 teams that are still... No, that's not true. Buffalo lost. I was going to say are still alive. We are on our schedule next year because we have San Francisco, Philly, and Buffalo.
This is the problem with winning your division.
I know. And being 8-9 and winning your division isn't the best combination.
You get a low draft pick and a hard schedule next year. Way to go.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Well, but only really just how many are determined by
3.
that? Just 3?
But it's
not
Philly,
like it
San
used to
Fran,
be.
and Buffalo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like it used to be.
Again, woof. All right, so JR, what's your pick?
Always going to Lambeau. Love the history, love the town, love Appleton.
They put a whole new thing outside their stadium
They
now,
did.
too. It's like
Yeah.
an ice skating rink and shopping and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, and then they have this big toboggan slide. And
You're gonna go down
it's
that, aren't you,
all-
JR?
Absolutely. They
Yes.
have changed the way it used to be. The stadium used to just live in a residential area. Now it's become more commercial and it's developing. And so I haven't seen it in a few years. So Lambeau, out of all the stadiums I walk into, I always get a chill on that one because it
Probably
is pretty
because
cool.
it's also cold.
Yeah. Well, boom.
Luke Gedeke has told me I've got to try the Wisconsin cheese curds.
Oh, God. They
Have you ever
weird
had
me out.
this?
I've actually never had those.
Once you do, you won't again.
Oh, really?
My college boyfriend was from Wisconsin, and I remember his dad came to visit and just brought him a giant ice chest of cheese curds. Because he drove there from Wisconsin, and they were explaining these to me, and he was talking about how amazing is that it makes this squeaking noise when you eat it, and I'm like, why is that a pro?
Like
I
Lucky
don't-
Charms marshmallows.
Yeah.
See, I thought this was something that I would enjoy, and you're kind of all crashing my hopes and dreams.
So
'cause
we
that
feel
doesn't-
like we just need to prepare you that it may not be exactly what you imagine. I feel like it's
No, it is. You have to try it.
maybe it's like St. Louis pizza.
Oh, don't even go there
For 8 years, Scott and I have been yelling about St. Louis pizza
because it's awesome.
because it's terrible. Now you're caught up on our debate.
There you go.
Okay, so my game I'm excited for, I was picking either the Eagles at home or San Fran on the road. Eagles at home just because I think they are obviously an incredibly fun team to watch this year, and I just think that's going to be a really big matchup. And then the San Fran one on the road is just so much of that is obviously pending. Does Brady come back? Does he not? But the idea of the revenge game of what happened there this year, regardless of whether or not he's here, I think that just to see that, and now again, San Fran's just a fun team to watch and go against. So, yeah, those are my two games I picked for this year.
See, now if I was going to get a home game, I'd say Detroit because I think they're going to be fun to watch.
Yeah.
That's the other.
I became a bit of a Lions fan after Hard Knocks. I'm not going to lie. That just Dan Campbell, I'm like, what a delightful, dude.
Imagine doing a radio show with him.
That would be something. Let me tell you.
Watch your kneecaps. Mine, I'm going to go with Minnesota on the road because I think we've only been to that new stadium once, but it
Yes.
is awesome.
It is. That's a great stadium.
So I want to see that stadium again, although I don't need to hear the freaking horn.
What would be great is if it was in September, and then we'd be able to catch a baseball game at the same
Okay,
time.
then that makes my pick even better.
Okay.
And we did that
We had a preseason game.
Yeah.
in Minnesota.
Yeah, we had a preseason game.
And also, given the way they play their games, like the way they did all of this year, it should be a fun one that goes down to the wire and somebody wins right at the end.
Maybe a dramatic comeback.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's good. All right, so our final segment here, we always close with our quote of the week, which typically
Oh, boy.
is something that a Bucs person has said about the game that week. It's either a player or a coach, something from the press conferences that we pick. But again, obviously, that is not as relevant right now. So I decided to mix it up and say, why don't we pick a quote that is from a movie or a TV show, and then see that if it applies to the Buccaneers. So there's a few different ways you guys could have taken this, but again, I just kind of left it at that of a quote from a TV or movie that would apply to the Buccaneers. Who would like to go first? Not all at once.
I will.
Perfect.
I have two. One that refers to this past season and one that is looking forward to the next one.
Okay.
The first one is from the greatest TV show of all time, Lost.
Oh my god.
You said in our little Slack chat that you was from the greatest show of all time and didn't say which one, and I have been trying to figure out what show that was going to be for you.
I should probably say it's one of the greats and my favorite of all time because I've also seen all of Breaking Bad, and I have to admit that's probably a better show. And I've never seen The Wire, but everybody says that's incredible. But it's my favorite TV show and one of the greatest of all times. And the quote is, "It only ends once. Anything that happens before that is just progress."
Interesting.
So as Jeff was saying, how the pithy point about how only one team wins. Nobody's happy. That's the common quote. Nobody except one
so
team.
you're solidifying my comment.
I'm saying
Thank you.
Children.
that's how football season is, and you get into the playoffs, and there's no second chance. But every
Right.
season is going to end one time. But even in a season that wasn't satisfying, you can make progress along the way. So We got some rookies that filled some big roles and should get better and better. We even finding things, even pinpointing the things that held you back can be progress because you know what you need to focus on this season.
So I like that.
That's very thoughtful.
I like that. JR? Oh, wait, you had two. You said.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yep.
For the upcoming season, if this is the end of the Brady era, which I think there's a very good chance it is in Tampa, this quote is from Cape Fear, the movie. Still, things won't ever be the way they were before he came. But that's all right because if you hang on to the past, you die a little every day. And for myself, I know I'd rather live. So everyone, if Tom Brady does move on, retire, or go to another team, don't hang it up. Stick with us here, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Don't dwell on the past and if Tom Brady was here, yeah, the next season might not be as good. It might be, it might not be, but at least you're living.
Yep.
At least your fandom didn't die.
There you go.
that.
That's fair.
In other words, don't hop off the bandwagon is what I'm
Please.
hearing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh. We're not going to go boy, girl, no.
Oh, are we in middle school again?
Yeah,
Is that what it is?
just throwing it out there. I've got 3.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
And as Scott will attest to, I do like to watch old movies on the airplane.
I'm
true.
so
Yes.
hoping that I
I'm
picked the
ready
same
for
one
this.
as you.
Casablanca or something?
No, this one is from Cool Hand Luke.
That's the one I said.
And it made me laugh because it's so true about what was always talked about, what was wrong defensively. And the line is, what we got here is failure
to communicate.
I had that too.
That's incredible.
Because you mentioned Cool Hand Luke, it made me think about it.
And that is, and if you listen to what everybody said when we had a bad game, it was
Failure
communication.
to communicate.
A failure, but the interesting part is not a failure. It's just plain is failure to communicate. Everyone wants to put an A in there. There's not an A.
Oh, okay.
So just because I know you're a stickler for quotes.
I have never seen that movie, but everybody knows that quote.
Yeah. Okay, so that's my end of
That's a good
season
one. Yep.
Okay.
I just think it's incredible that there are probably roughly a billion movies and TV shows, and you two both picked the same exact quote.
But the reason it fits, it was supposed to fit the season.
And I brought up, I made a joke on Slack about how
You
you
did.
probably watched From Cool Hand Luke or something.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know that I would have picked it if not for that. It was like, don't think about a pink elephant kind of thing.
Yeah.
Once you mentioned it, I was like, oh, yeah.
So I'm going to stay in the same vein of older movies because this is a great movie. I don't care when you see it, how many times you see it, it's still a great movie.
The Matrix?
No, I saw that. That was okay, and I couldn't. The one quote I liked there, I couldn't use because it didn't fit the theme that we have going. So, anyways, TB12. This is what Jason Light is going to say to TB12.
And what movie is it from?
This is from The Godfather.
Okay. An offer you can't refuse.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
No.
Swear to you.
It's right here. It's right there.
Where do you
It's
I
right
have
there.
it to?
Unbelievable.
It's right there.
I
It's
should have
right
gone
there.
first.
You guys should pool your money and buy a lottery ticket.
Okay.
You should.
So that's my theory there. And then I have one more, and that is what the next season is going to be, how I feel about the next coming season. You ready? It's from the Hunger Games.
Wasn't expecting that.
No. I know.
May the odds be ever in your favor.
Okay.
Those are my 3 quotes.
Yes.
Amazing. Bree?
So I definitely took a different route. All of the quotes that I was trying to find to summarize the past season wasn't really finding a lot that I enjoyed. So I'm going to go with a Disney/Pixar philosopher, Miss Edna Mode from The Incredibles. And more of just how looking ahead after evaluations of this previous season, how I'm feeling, team's mindset moving forward. I never look back, darling. It distracts from the now. It's so good. It's
She
my
did the
quote.
voice.
The little voice was good.
Is my quote.
Yeah, we should have made JR do his Marlon Brando over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to get cotton and put it in my mouth.
Yeah. So yes, that was your quote.
Yeah. And all of the I'm a huge Remember the Titans fan, but it's all the football that I was trying to find, none of it fit. So I was in a bit of a pickle. So I went with
Yep, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I wrote down a billion quotes because I was a little afraid people would take some, which apparently was a valid fear.
Yeah.
Guys, they're so good.
And I just in general kept finding good ones that I wanted to use. So obviously JR took a couple of mine. I was going to mention that, hopefully there's not a horse head in Tom Brady's bed after that. Okay, so mine that I'll go with.
Does that mean he's going to the Colts?
Oh my gosh.
Or the Broncos?
Yes, either one.
Okay.
Mine I'll go with is Show Me the Money from Jerry Maguire because of our salary cap situation of how they're going to figure all of that out. I am essentially saying to our front office, show me where do we have money somewhere? Where is the money? How are we going to do this? So that was one of them of this upcoming season. I also had, thinking back over these last few years that we have had Tom Brady, regardless of whether or not he comes back, it was if you build it, he will come from Field of Dreams. That one sort of made me laugh about the looking back. And then I felt like I had to pick something from The Office because Scott always makes fun of me for quoting The Office in every situation in my life. And there were a couple that came to my mind. One was the moment that if Brady announces he's coming back, there's the famous gif and scene where Michael Scott's character is just running around going, "Oh my God, it's happening! Everyone stay calm, stay effing calm!" Like, so that was my idea of if he comes back. And then this is basically for my quote of what we're all going to be doing until he makes his announcement, that Michael Scott gets asked about his like management style and philosophy and how he does what he does by his boss. And he just starts randomly. And he's like, "My philosophy is basically this. And this is something that I live by. And I always have. And I always will. Don't ever, for any reason, do anything to anyone for any reason ever. No matter what, no matter where, or who you're with, or where you're going, or where you've been, ever, for any reason." And then it just cuts to him doing a talking head where he's like, "Sometimes I start a sentence and I don't even know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way."
Yes.
This is what I feel like is going to be all of us until Brady announces, is that when people ask what he's doing, we're just going to be like, well, there's a chance that maybe if possibly for some reason forever in the future, I don't know. So yeah, that was my thought as I talk about this. Sometimes I'm going to start a sentence and I don't even know where I'm going. Just hope I find it along the way.
I love that quote, and I love that you used it because Scott and I, or at least I do, I say that to Scott all the time.
Yeah, just start a
It's
sentence.
one of the best.
Don't
Which
really know
one?
where it's going.
Which one?
The
Start a
the
sentence
Michael
one.
Scott, the start a sentence, and sometimes
Oh.
I don't really know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way.
Yep. And then I also thought about in Jaws when they said you're going to need a bigger boat. That as we welcome Bucs fans onto, instead of a bandwagon, it's our boat. That's my philosophy, is that we're just going to welcome new and more and all of the Bucs fans. That everyone is staying on. No one is hopping off, regardless of what happens. We're going to need a bigger boat. Those are my
That quote
ideas.
is actually, "You're going to need a bigger boat."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I knew. See,
It's
that's
written.
why.
It's written down. You're going to need a bigger boat.
Yeah.
Did I say we?
Yeah.
Oh well, I was translating it to how it would apply.
Because
for
that's
the
what
Bucs.
everybody.
I told you,
thinks it is.
Scott.
Yeah.
We'll make sure you get to quote.
Oh
one.
yes,
So.
you're gonna. I love the movie Jaws. It's one of my all-time favorites.
Really?
I do.
So how many of the movies that were quoted in here have you seen, Bree? Have you seen The Godfather?
Oh,
Have you seen
I
Cool
feel
Hand?
like I need to like
She
bow
ducked.
my head
Have
in
you seen
shame.
Cool Hand Luke?
No,
I haven't either. Have you seen Cape
Hung-
Fear?
no.
I haven't seen Cape Fear. I
Oh,
think
Cape
that was the only
Fear's
thing.
great.
I
Which one
seen.
did you see? There's
I
a
what?
with
Al
Robert
Pac-
De Niro.
Robert De Niro.
Yeah, that's
There's
the best
another one.
There was one made way
Oh,
before.
no.
that
Which
one.
ones did you use again?
Lost, the TV show, because
Yep.
that was in the
Yeah, I
rules.
didn't
of the
see
game.
that either.
Haven't seen that.
Someone told me the ending before I got to watch it, and so I was like, well, that,
Forget that.
Yeah,
Well, a lot of people didn't like the ending, but the
know.
journey was well worth it.
Yeah.
maybe I'll watch it then. Maybe that'll be my plan. Well, that was the end of our segments that we had for Tampa 2.
Okay.
All right.
So what?
Kicking it back to our
Kicking
the
it
ball
back over
our
to the
court?
Salty Dogs.
Well, are we done?
I think so. I have one. We usually read emails.
yeah.
Yes.
I'm just going to read one. It's not a question. It's from Philip Schwadron, a fan of the Bucs in California. Hey, S-Dogs. I'd like to take a moment to pay tribute to Coach Lori Locust, who was fired last week along with several others. I'm proud to root for a team that won a Super Bowl with 2 female coaches and 3 black coordinators. I'm convinced that Byron Leftwich and the others will find jobs, but I really hope Coach Locust does too. We need more like her in the NFL. Thanks for another great season of podcasts. I just thought it was nice that a fan.
Wow, that's really well
I
done.
love that.
Wanted to
There you
say
go,
that.
Philip. I would love to echo that. I think that's a great sentiment, and I'm so glad that fans recognize that, and that's how I have felt working here this was the 8th season I've been here now, and I just always love that I get to say that I, worked for the organization that did so much to promote women and people of color in different roles. I mean, that's just such a cool thing to say. And even thinking about how, for me, early in my broadcast career, I was thinking about doing news simply because I hadn't thought as much about sports because there were so few women doing it back then. And it took a woman suggesting it to me that she was my broadcast teacher. And she suggested it to me of, why don't you consider sports? And I can't imagine where I'd be if she hadn't done that. And so I love the more opportunities you see from these people, the more hopefully there are little girls out there or people of color that are saying, looking at that and saying, you know what, that could be me someday. That sometimes it just takes someone suggesting it, seeing it, and I love that the Bucs have helped to do that. And Bree and I have talked about that on our podcast, that how cool it is that we have just an all-woman podcast talking about football and sports, and that wasn't why it happened, but it was just how it worked out, and how cool it is to have an organization that hires that and promotes that and supports it.
And it is getting better around the league.
Yes.
We're obviously leaders.
Making progress.
We're the Buccaneers are leaders. Pioneers in that. But it's getting better all around the league. I think the Packers just announced they hired a full-time female trainer. I don't remember her name, for the first time in franchise history.
Wow.
So.
Right. But yeah, I will say that was one of a big draw for me in coming here, was just that the Bucs have been at the forefront and the pioneers of trying to create equality here, and just a real family atmosphere, but also just Coach Lowe. I was actually able to connect with her prior to actually even getting this job, and just what a kind, incredible person, just reaching out to me, being welcoming when I first got here, and being kind of a voice of wisdom for me. So
it wasn't the opportunity to work with me. That wasn't the big draw.
Well, that was definitely a draw.
Oh,
I will say, though,
There was a long pause there. I don't know.
no,
She doesn't even think Ronde Barber should be in the Hall of Fame.
That's the takeaway.
No, on my interview with you, we chatted for like an hour. I still remember Scott looking down at the end of it, and he was like, "Oh my God, it's been like 55 minutes. This was supposed to end after 30."
Look at that.
So, Mr. Scott Smith, we were Chatty Cathy.
Mr. Softy,
Yeah.
as he's known around the office.
Oh, yes.
Oh gosh.
I don't think I like any of the connotations of that.
You're a kind, caring individual.
That's true.
There you go. There's a connotation for you that you like.
Okay. So if we're done, are we done?
Do you guys have a sign off?
Salta, Tampa 2 dogs.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Salty.
Do you
That's good.
guys
You had
end
like
your
a southern
show?
drawl when you said
Salty.
dogs. Just
Dogs.
Dogs.
Salty
Yeah, we
dogs.
just thank everyone for tuning in, and that we'll see you next time.
Oh, we don't do that.
No, we don't do that.
Yeah, so of course not. You're salty. You don't thank people. We
No.
are nice and thank
Yes.
people for listening. It is an honor to podcast
Well,
with all of you.
Thank you to the two of you for being on our podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And we were pleased to be on yours.
This is great. We'll have to do it again.
Yes, we will.
And since you did, thanks for listening.